So, a very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd start by saying finance and marketing, a marriage made in heaven. My first question is to Mr. Venkatramanan. You'd carry a global perspective in terms of the most imminent recession, where we're talking about some of the world economy is going into a possible recession. Sri Lanka, we're facing the heat. There's inflation, prices have skyrocketed. There could be unemployment spikes as well. In your view, are there any sort of recession-proof careers? Do you see management accounting as a recession-proof career? Or is it recession-proof skills? Would like to get your thoughts on that, sir.
Usually we say you saved the best for the last, but he saved the best for the first. I'll use Chan as example somewhere down the line. So, I don't think there's something called a recession-proof career. I think it's something called recession-proof people. And the way to think about it is, if you keep doing the same thing, and this is something we always say, if you keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result, that's the definition of insanity. If you have the same skills, and if you want a different outcome, you're not going to get it. If you keep learning, unlearning, relearning, continuously and consistently, you're able to navigate through whatever environment you're going to have. So look at those journeys of people who have succeeded over a period of time. They just didn't count their attitude to be the point at which things changed. They looked at the changing learning environment, studied that, looked at the skills, went in, adopted the skills. About 3 years ago, I did a fintech program with Oxford University. Why? Half the time when I'm speaking to finance people, especially in the banking sector, I get lost as to what they're saying. They talk about the changes in technology, the impact in that, and I wanted a room in that discussion place so that I also can have conversations with them. 3 weeks later, I was able to have that conversations with them. So the ability for any country or company or institution to come out of any challenges with economy, recession, has to do with how they utilize people, profits, yes, people, how they're able to innovate, change their business model, change what they do if things are not working, leave it a be, and move forward. The worst thing that you can do is look at a traditional forecasting system, what has taken place over 5 years, and try to paint the line where you're heading. And the worst thing that you can do on top of that is to look at existing marketing basis in how we promote the product. And you have to look at things differently. I think that's where we look at from a global perspective. One, adapt, learn, unlearn, relearn. Continuously, consistently, be curious, learn. Continue to bring value to your company that you work. If you don't find it, look for one. And be curious all the time. Ask questions, discover new things, and adapt and change.
Thank you very much, Venkat. Manindri, you're currently in the insurance industry, and you're in a C-level position in marketing. You decided to pursue the CGMA qualification when you were in marketing. How has the CGMA qualification or a business and finance qualification aided you, or why did you decide to pursue a qualification as such? I'd like to get your thoughts.
So I would say that in a workplace, everyone's scope keeps increasing. So even in an industry or as individuals, our scopes continuously evolve and it keeps increasing. So there's no clear demarcation of certain roles. So as you evolve in your functions and in your day-to-day workspace, I think it's like the two keynote speakers mentioned, that it's always good to enhance your skills. So why I personally moved into the area of finance or looked at that as a qualification is a little bit of what Channa also mentioned about, you know, it helps or gives you that ability to disconnect that emotional connect and bring in a bit of logic into forums, especially the discussions with the CFOs and in the boardroom, because it's easier to convince when you logically showcase it through numbers and, you know, when you talk revenue, profits, etc. So it helps a lot to sort of convince the shareholders and the key decision makers. So it has helped in that sense. So that would be the key role, a key reason that I also embarked on this whole journey of pursuing SEMA.
Thank you, thank you. Chana sir, you mainly spoke about mindset and happiness, which is no doubt interesting. But at the same time, I think there's a very common misconception saying that finance resources are pretty much back-end resources. The marketing resources are pretty much, you know, the breadwinners of an organization, or the front-end resources. And without marketing, there's no sales. So no sales would mean no profit. So does that mean finance resources are redundant? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so the question is, I don't know what the right answer is, but the question is, whether finance function will be redundant, or whether it will be less important, or the marketing function will be more critical because they bring in sales. I think I agree. I mean, marketing function is absolutely critical because they bring in sales. If no sales, no profit, without a doubt. It's just that who will go up in the ladder is the discussion, I think, mostly with us, right? We have maybe 100 finance guys, 100 marketing guys in the room. The question is, who will be the next CEO? So I think that is where that proper balance comes in. That is where that proper balance comes in. Extreme into any of those will fail. Extreme into any of these will fail. And if you look at the qualifications are also getting adjusted. As I mentioned, SEMA, we are trying to now get out of all the hardcore finance and try to make a better general manager. So people will have to get adjusted as well, obviously. So I have no, I mean, obviously, I mean, if I need to choose between killing my finance guys and sales guys, I'll happily kill all the finance guys. I need sales, as much as I hate marketing guys for various things. So it's the balance that we should be pushing hard. That will survive.
Thank you, John, sir. Nirodha, I think you're from the apparel industry, and you pursued SEMA or the CGMA qualification as well. Besides the technical skill of accounting or being prudent with financial statements, you would have acquired other skills as well and broadened your horizons. When you have a discussion with, as you're heading a department at RPAC in sales and marketing, when you have discussions with the finance people, how does that help you? Has your perception changed about finance? Is it more easier? Is it a more seamless discussion that you have?
Yes, so I initially started from the apparel industry where, while starting off, was when I was studying SEMA. Moving on, I realized that I was more interested in marketing, hence the reason I started SEMA. It does make a difference because I've covered so many areas of departments during my tenure at MAS. So I had the exposure of so many departments into manufacturing operations. So I sort of had an idea of all the functionalities. And yes, SEMA helped me throughout in all the number crunching and everything. And with time, when I got into marketing and that qualification, it did help me understand the importance of that aspect as well. And in making conversations in the boardroom, it makes sense to have both the knowledge and the experience I gained from both industries. Right now it's apparel and I'm into more of packaging into apparel. The experience gained from both the knowledge really helps to convince everyone else at the boardroom. It may not only be the finance team, but there are so many members participating in conversations where decisions are made, strategic decisions are made. So yes, it does help convincing everybody, talking their language, having that experience through cross-functional areas to give a broader view and easier decision making for us.
Thank you, Nirodha. I'd like to also open up this session to the audience to make it interactive as well. So if there are any sort of audience-related questions, please do raise your hand. We will get a few mics across. Feel free to make the most out of this elite panel today. Venkat, if I can get your thoughts on the gig economy. Now, in Sri Lanka, maybe a single source of income might not be sufficient, and you get a lot of talent looking at other jobs, like secondary jobs, moonlighting. What are your thoughts on that, and is there any way that SEMA supports as well? I know for a fact we have the Global Career Hub, which supports in terms of facilitating and finding SEMA students and members remote opportunities. Is there any thoughts around that, Venkat?
Can you all hear me? Would it be okay at the last one? Can you all hear me? Just checking if they're awake or not. Sorry. All right, that's a significant echo. Sorry. Manindri said it right. Internally within an organization, the lines are blurred. You will have amalgamation of roles, departments taking place over a period of time. You look at the world of work, as we call it, lines are getting blurred as well. At one point, there was a gig economy where people were working certain jobs 3 days a week, 4 days a week, and then they will do other jobs just to sustain themselves. There's so much more conversations involved in how, like a country like Sri Lanka, when you look at people who need to look at sustenance or long-term sustainability to come out of the economy, people might not just be looking at different roles or working and doing something else, but they also may be having an opportunity to look for new roles elsewhere. Now, COVID has broken that a lot in a way that you can actually be based in one country and actually work for another country. You have this principle called nomad workers that's taking place right now, and most countries are giving what you call nomad visas. Bali, for example, Indonesian immigration system is the toughest when you want to enter that country. They're giving 5 or 7 years worth of nomad visa, so you can live there and you can work. So connecting back to your question, Chatushka, opportunities to work in the way we look at things are getting blurred in what we see it as a traditional organization to work for. There may not be a traditional 9-to-5 role, there not be maybe a traditional role advertised, there may be no traditional concept of joining at a junior level and moving forward. The world is very blurred when it comes to opportunities. Those who seek it fast and seek it quick will be able to get it. You're right, our career hub has an expansion of roles. So what we do is for our members, we don't want them to have access to roles only within a certain country, like for example in Colombo, and just look for opportunities across. Go to the career hub, CGMA career hub, if you search it and you find it, you can actually choose a locality in UK, for example, in Kent. Is there roles on management accounting? Who does this? Or is there roles that are looking at remote working based in different countries? But again, one thing that's critical they always look for is the skills attached to it. So lines will continue to be blurred. People will look for long-term sustainability or sustaining out of economic situation to survive. And of course, wherever they seek the opportunity, they'll be able to get it, like the Career Hub, for example.
Thank you so much, Venkat. I'd like to again seek from the audience if they have any questions. Please do raise your hand, and we'll be happy to take questions from the audience. Seems like no questions so far. I'd strongly encourage you to ask questions, make the use of the panel. It's a very elite panel seated here today. Chanasa, now I call him Chanasa because he was my lecturer at Nanaska as well. Now, is it wise to make an investment? Now, there could be marketing professionals who are thinking of pursuing a business qualification, but the disposable income is limited because of what is currently going on. Do we need to invest in skill development during these times, or is it merely being complacent and staying afloat, considering what is happening with the new proposed tax amendments and the increase in inflation and all of that? What are your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, so these times, for most organizations, even for us, there were few months we were thinking, look here, we should work hard, don't just surviving ourselves for the next few months, because there were serious and difficult times. We had issues of getting raw material in, our exports could not ship on time and all that. So same thing would be applicable for an individual as well. Then again, looking at the organization, we were thinking, look here, COVID would be a great opportunity for us to do a lot of things that we would not do otherwise. So as much as we had enough troubles, COVID and post-COVID, with other economic crises within the country, we have used that time very effectively within the organization for the organizational internal restructuring, internal development. We have done a lot of thinking. We have done a lot of planning. We were believing, look here, when the things are settled down, if they ever will settle down, we'll be much stronger as an organization. That happened to us after COVID. As much as COVID hit us financially, when things settled down, we were much stronger because of the things that we did during the period of COVID as an organization. I think same would be applicable for all of us. Same would be applicable for all of us. There's no better time for us to learn something new. There's no better time for us to kind of go into new areas. So what we generally discuss within our internal teams is, look at the organization, look at what your next position within the organization elsewhere, see what qualities are required for you to go there. So there's a discussion of whether one income is good enough, whether we need to have two jobs and all that. I think if one income is not good enough, two will not be enough as well. I mean, it's just internally. We get adjusted to all human beings, especially Sri Lankans, we will get adjusted to the things that are happening. When your salary is 1 million, your expenses are 1.1. Your salary is 5 million, your expenses are 5.2. So that's life. So it's just how you look at things as well. How you look at things as well. So therefore, I think if one job is not enough, two won't be enough as well. It's just that you look at it and how you will get adjust yourself internally and run the show. I think that's more critical for you to do it internally as a human being within your teams, rather than looking at any of the major changes that's given in the book. So we are, if you look at the current, just going out of the question for a little while, but if you look at the current situation of the country, all of us are responsible. That's how we have been voting, so we get what we voted for. So now is the time to say, look here, we did stupid things, so let's face to it and we'll come out stronger. We have come out stronger from worse things. Without a doubt, as a country we will. Where you are is the question that we need to sort it out. So are you in the pool who will work hard during the period, where you will be stronger when things are settled down with the country? So I think that's the only thing that we need to concentrate on. Thanks.
Thank you. Just checking if there's any questions. Yes, gentleman at the front. If we can get him a working mic.
Yeah.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a question. Maybe all of you can answer. So in this the context that we are in the country, right? You know, some of the categories and some of the companies are facing difficulty in terms of, you know, making their category or the company relevant to the consumer, right? Because some are FMCG or commodities, of course, yes, but there are other categories of product that you are selling. So it's extremely difficult to make it relevant because of price, because of you know, various other things, the disposable income. How could you balance your market share and profitability battle? Now, obviously, your marketing or your sales team would say, okay, reduce the price, drive volume. We want to be, you know, gain market share. The other side of the coin is, let's manage the situation. Increase or take your price increases, manage your bottom line, and stay afloat until you pass this wave or something like, you know, this current. So what's the right approach? Or I know it can, you know, deviate from category to category, but what do you guys think in your own industries? Or what's the approach that you would take in this scenario?
Why don't you pick that up first, Aldo?
My problem is I can't remember the question, so when you answer.
Now both mics all of a sudden work. You're always going to get caught. I can't comment on a Sri Lankan perspective. I still need to depart next week on a Thursday, so I'll be careful what I say. I live in Malaysia, for your information. I'm Sri Lankan, though, but that's where my home is for the past 13 years. You're always going to have a situation where you're going to survive first. And the problem is you can't be on a survival mentality all the time. Because if you're on a survival mentality, that's what you're going to do. Let me share you a small example. In KL during COVID times, what happened was the grocery sellers, the people who used to sell vegetables and fruits, were the old Chinese uncles and old Chinese aunties. In KL, in any family you go to, if you ask, the purchasing decisions are made by mothers, by the way, not by fathers, by mothers in terms of where to go get. They will only go to this, or grandparents, go to this grocery shop. You go there, it's a traditional system. No different to here. Tell them what they want. They don't have a calculator. They will tell you how much amount, you pay and go cash. No credit card, nothing. No different to here what happened after COVID. They adapted very, very, very quickly. They knew it's not about surviving just this storm, but it's also about how they can survive things like this happen in the future. They went into WhatsApp. They created a microsite. Now you go to that shop to buy things, they'll most probably tell you, have you placed an order before coming? And importantly, we don't accept cash. You do it cashless. You do the transfer before you come to the place. So you're always going to be caught in this parallel discussion. The finance person only can control one thing. He can't see the future. He can have foresight about what might happen. But the finance person can't determine what your revenue is, can determine what your cost is, and if you're not nice to him, can determine what your cost is. The salespeople are always gung-ho. You ask them, can you get this? Yeah, of course can, no problem, shape. We can. But the ultimate question is, you've got to ask yourself, what are you there to create? Who are you creating it for? So of course he has a boss who's 300 million to 600 million, that's what he needs. And his next year target has already been decided, 1,200 million, because he has to keep doubling it every year. The focus of anyone is to meet in the middle and understand who are we serving, what are we serving, who's our stakeholder, who's our shareholder. Now, there's another topic that's going around everywhere, is ESG. Have you heard of it? Environmental Social Governance, right? But you go to smaller companies, they say, I don't care about the environment, I have to survive. In UK, ESG is something critically important, that they put carbon emission standards and controls by which year, and they're blaming India and China for not achieving their targets or not agreeing on achieving their targets. But you go to India, that fellow says, I need to put food on my plate. I can't care about the burning village there or burning trees over there. I need to survive, I need to do what I need to do. Bottom line is, you're always going to get caught with irrational conversations between a lot of things. You have to provide clarity. Why are we here? What are we going to do? Are we going to survive in the short term? We have to look into the long term. The other question is also, what business are we in? For all you know, he might move away from porcelain and start making boots next year. If that's a core competency and the technology enables him to do it, he will do it. But be agile, know how to adapt, but importantly, have the right people within your organization. People think you bring technology, all problems are sorted. Technology creates a lot more problems first. The people who see it through.
Yeah. Just to add, there's nothing else to add, just to give an example to what he said. I hate to say that, nothing else to add, but just to give an examples to what he said only. I think all of us need a COVID every few years. All of us need economic session within the organization every few years. That will give a great opportunity for us to relook at the things and take some basic decisions. Only trouble is, as your question partly about the organization, partly about individuals as well. Only trouble is whether we will, I think this is the time all of us will have to reset and decide which company we are going to work for, which product that we are going to sell. That decision has to be made. Because the environment is entirely different now. So, as I said, we were trying to expand US and Europe. Last year we said, look, it's not going to work. Let's go back to India and Dubai, because those two countries, due to whatever, I'm sure Malaysia is doing well, but those two countries are not affected from any of the global crises that everyone is talking about. So our percentage on those two countries went up, and our original plans were thrown out of the window. So what I'm trying to say is, all of us will have to rethink about everything that we do, from are we working for the right organization? Governor of the central bank was saying, look, these are the companies that will thrive in this environment for next few years. So we'll have to take a call on that. And as an organization, are we selling the right product? Now, if you look at the Ankoto situation locally, again, we took certain crazy decisions, right? When I joined in 2019, and most of the loss-making customers were thrown out. But now, last year, we, without any shame, we went back to them and said, look here, we took our own decision, please come back, we love you, now only we realize how great you are. We took them back because of the rupee depreciation. What I'm trying to say is, we took, right, I'm sure a lot of the things that we did were wrong and things did not go right always. What I'm trying to say, we reconsider everything that we have been doing internally. I think all of us will have to do it, starting from the organization that we are working for. So my only trouble is whether we delay that decision. That's the disaster. I'm sure the Pranab Wickramasinghe is waiting for the IFO money, but you should not. You should look at what the right decision for yourself and for your organization and do the change. If you don't do that only, the COVID will be a disaster, the economic crisis will be a disaster. Otherwise, it will be an amazing learning experience for us to change ourselves. So let me end saying what I said at the beginning. All of us need a COVID every few years for us to kind of be better.
Go ahead, Manipriya.
No, I would also add to that, saying priority is to survive during that period. But like Venkat also said, survival will only keep you sort of afloat for few years, maybe a few months for that. But, you know, diversify, see your strength, sort of go in that route. And like he said, if you need to change what you're doing traditionally, change it and make it work. So basically, there's no right answer, right route. It's that situation, how you deal with it.
I think all three of them covered most of it, but I think, yes, you spoke of more of the sales and the profit, the marketing side of it. But I think when you look at a P&L, there's so many lines that you can actually address. You can relook at your process, like Channa said. You can rethink on what you can do differently. There's so many cost saving, I think everybody does across all organizations. So it's time to rethink your processes, relook at your numbers, where you are, what you have probably done wrong. When business was high up and running, we probably did not have time to do that. But now you do have time in your hands. So it's probably the time to actually step into the root cause of things that you never were able to look into.
Thank you. I think the panel has covered, but I just want to add, with AICPA and CIMA, right, we have the CGMA competency framework. They brought in the digital skills, which is a new element that was brought into the curriculum. So it's a very progressive qualification, and I felt the organization was very sensitive towards the changes. So it's during turbulent times, it's about adapting and thriving. I just thought I should mention that as an example. Any further questions? Sure.
I'm just curious because you are both SEMA members and you all owned and walked into marketing roles and marketing departments and you work with them. How was it for you and how did you gain the trust of the teams from a different competency and skills to this skill and that you brought through? And what would you tell the other way around for marketing people who get into finance? Because I'm usually very curious about this. It's an interesting area. Only you both have been in there, of course, Chan.
So for me personally, I would say, so marketing is looked at, when you go into a finance discussion, marketing is looked at, yes, sales is brought in through marketing, but more of a spender. So we are doing savings, we are trying to get profits to the P&L, but you guys are, sometimes you say it's equity, but where does it reflect in the revenue? So they don't understand it's long term, you're building equity, it will come in because that's needed, brand building is needed. So those are difficult conversations. So when the budget meetings and when those discussions happen, I've given up sort of justifying equity and how the brand equity scores have improved over the years. I've technically given up. I basically now speak in terms of revenue, and if it's promotions, campaigns, even trade margins, you would speak on return on marketing investment, return on marketing and trade investment, then I get the budget through. So it helps to convince, it helps to make that conversation, it's easier, faster, I get the budget I request for and I walk out happily. So that has helped me a lot. And having the qualification tagged, even though how much you say you're an analytic person, when you have the qualification tag, you sort of talk and walk out of the meeting rather than trying to convince the other finance guy in the room. So it helps.
I'll talk more of on a personal note. I was actually doing the more of a marketing merchandise role at the apparel sector, so I was already into the marketing, working with the finance team, holding hands. So the only time they used to challenge was when minus numbers do come in. So that is when they fall off the chair, right? So, I mean, all companies make different decisions throughout. I think one of the biggest decisions we made once was getting a big customer without consulting finance, and it sort of became a nightmare to everyone. So, yeah, we need to walk together, walk in hand. Like you said, yes, it is definitely a marriage. As long as you talk their language, and like she said, as long as you have that qualification behind it, sort of helps and makes some sense in a weird way. For me, I always think it's the experience anybody has to gain more than a qualification. It's when you're pushed into a deep end that you learn things firsthand. But along the career ladder, I've realized that qualification always helps. And inside the boardroom, it does make a major difference when you know how to talk the finance language, and also maybe since I was in a manufacturing segment, you need to be able to understand the manufacturing segment as well.
A mic to the gentleman right at the front.
This question is for Chan, a quick one through my experience over the years. You are a CEO and you are from finance background. So I've seen over the years, especially if you want to climb up the ladder, depends on the type of organization. Sometimes they favor towards a particular profession, could be a finance or engineering. Whereas you get a lot of talent from other professions. You see that practice across the board, or what are your thoughts on that?
I of course complain about my earlier CEOs. I'm sure my colleagues are complaining about me. So I had a CEO before who was entirely for manufacturing. He used to say, there's a first guy was entirely for marketing. He used to say, trouble is to bring an order, then we can put an army and somehow deliver it. Again, apparel industry. So he was only for marketing side of it. Then I worked for a CEO who was only supporting production, nothing else. So he was pushing for the orders, that is manufacturing friendly, nothing else. So I'm sure our guys also complain about me to whatever the side, but it's just that open discussion. You have a top player where I insist you don't have a department. So I have a SLT, senior leadership team, then I have a collective leadership team. So that 32 people, senior leadership 10 and 32 in total in collective leadership, I'm very, very serious that they don't have a department. Because that's a disaster. That's a disaster. And I believe it in, and I seriously work on that. I mean, if you look at my senior general manager, manufacturing is doing a sale these days, as we speak. As long as that layer is together, I think that the impact of that complaint comes down to a great extent. Because the rest of the organization will see we work together. And it's an open discussion. So we openly say, look here, I want to support marketing side here. Yes, a risky decision. The investment is, so we're trying to spend 30 million to put something at the airport. I mean, how can you justify it? I mean, whether it's right or wrong, only next year we can say. Only next year you can say. But then you take a side and go ahead in life. So the beauty is in ensuring your second layer works together as a team, which can easily be done through a basic bonus scheme. I mean, you ensure that you have a common target, everyone gets treated fairly if you go and hit that. So as long as you put them together, that's what we do. We have a concept called collective leadership, where 6 people will run the organization for every 2 months. Generally what I say is, you have all the powers that I have. Essentially, not, but then technically we say, look, you have all the powers that I have. And they have been given 3 months to plan, and they can run the entire organization for 2 months. That's absolutely a cross-functional team. So that's the solution that we have applied. It might work for others, it might not, but that has worked for us so far.
Yeah, one more question. Actually, I'd like to make a statement before asking the question. Getting back to just before Venkat mentioned about the vice versa about the topic, I also thought, why not marketing for finance guys? So what do we think here, what we talk here? Balance guys, at the end of the day, without getting into your silos in your organization. So still we see the battle between finance and marketing in different organizations in different levels. So my question here is, if it's prevailing in any company, I like to make a statement, it's a responsibility or the fault of the CEO of that company. Channa, you mentioned in your statement everything relating to the point what I'm making here, but I like to see, get responses from Manindra and Nirodha on the statement of this, what I mean.
So, it's another topic actually to have, because every time we sort of have finance for non-finance or finance for marketeers, it's never the other way around. So, being a marketeer, I support that statement completely, because when it comes to the emotional, like Channa said, the emotional side of things, it's useful. But at the end of the day, everyone do agree the business needs to be, the business runs when it's revenue generating and profit generating. But the human aspect, the cultural aspect, the emotional side actually makes it run faster or grow better. It's important to have that balance. Not only finance, it has to be, because HR function cannot only speak HR, they need to appreciate the business, the type of industry they are in. Similarly, IT needs to know the operations so that they can bring in and inculcate the technology within the system. So it's not only that one function. I would say it's an appreciation amongst each department and the functions they do. When you do have that appreciation, it actually helps the organization to grow, because like I said earlier, it's not a demarcated scope anymore. So when you do know and appreciate and the technicalities and the functional aspect of others and other departments, it helps to sort of get the growth happening faster and build the company faster. So it's basically appreciation across, I would say. So it's valid for finance teams also to appreciate marketing and other functions as well.
I think Manoj covered most of what I wanted to say, but I'd like to mention that out of all the departments in any organization, it's the marketers who actually get out there into the market. They are the ones who know what's going out there. They are the ones who know the trends. So everybody else, HR to finance to everyone will know what is happening within the organization, but it is the marketers who will know what's happening outside the organization. So I think definitely yes, that knowledge sharing would have been, is definitely good to be shared among all the other departments as to know why the numbers are going up, down, or why this customer is doing, why this product is selling better in this segment, likewise. So yes, I think marketing for finance or marketing for manufacturing, I think it's time now for all that coming.
Any last minute questions? You can bring one of the toughest questions to end the panel discussion. Any volunteers to ask a very tough question? We have Venkat, we have Channa, we have Panindri, we have Nirodha. Oh, many. Okay, two more.
Hi everyone, I'm Tuan from British Airways. This has nothing to do with British Airways. So this, all right. So going up the career ladder, one of the toughest parts, like most of the panelists mentioned, is the challenge. You fall in line with a finance person on the other side, and you as a marketer on this side. The finance person has sensitive information on the organization direction, whereas the marketer, that information is only on need-to-know basis. It's not a fair race. How do we manage this within an organization? How do you overcome this?
I can only share my experience on that. So we take a fairly radical approach on that. I'm a public listed company, so that fact is there, right? You can't disclose certain things. But within the organization, up to a fairly ground level, up to even a supervisor in a factory, profit is shared at Dankoto. So there is no question of whether it's marketing or HR. It's the numbers are shared, the plans are shared with the entire organization almost, but in terms of profit, it's kind of, it goes fairly down than what you are basically thinking about. So there's no question of whether it's marketing or not, right? Everyone gets to know it. The argument is everyone is part of it. But I manage the fact that we are a public listed company, therefore till the quarter end results are published, I can't say that. That's a restriction available. But once it's published, we go and tell everyone, look here how we have done in the last quarter. I think information will get more accurate when it's shared more. Information will get accurate when it's used more. And it's the ultimate objective is to create a common goal for everyone. So you can't create that common goal unless everyone knows what is happening in the organization. And one of my factories, we have changed from this month, the workers' incentive is based on the profits. Workers' incentive is based on, I don't know how it goes well, maybe next year if we meet again, I can say whether that factory is closed down or doing very well. That's a factory that I got new. They have been having losses for, I became the CEO of the second factory last year. So it had been having losses for 7 years, but this year we made profit. January we had done the radical change, which means employees at the ground level will know how much profit that we are making. So that's what we do. So therefore, I think that's might be an extreme solution, but that's what we do.
I'll take a stab at this because you said you're from British Airways, right? And nothing relating to British Airways, but there's a flight analogy attached to it. There's a pilot, there's a co-pilot. Now, why do you need a co-pilot? You need someone that the pilot can depend upon in terms of making a decision and heading from one location to another. Just think of, you know that already, right? So most of you know that. Now let me take it slightly differently. You go to a boardroom, you have board members and decision makers seated there, every one of them. The chief marketing officer will present. Different departments will present, different lines. When the critical questions are asked in terms of whether this can be sustained, whether this can be managed, they only look towards one person first, chief financial officer. Because the financial fiduciary responsibility of sustaining and ensuring the organization's continuity, regulated and unregulated, sits in his hand. That's why the financial officers sign off on books in terms of what they sign off, because it's their statement that they're putting. We live in a regulated environment. We can't change that. So the navigator, which we call as a co-pilot, is the finance person usually next to the pilot, the CEO. But doesn't mean everybody doesn't play an important role. I landed last night and went through a bit of a turbulence. I go through turbulence, I'm holding the chair. I don't know what's happening. When you drive a car, you're driving the car. You can see what's happening in front, you can see when it's raining. But when you're a passenger, you don't know. But you can see the synchronization of the entire airline. You can see the chief steward saying to the stewardesses, okay, go do this. They're all working in command and control. Not everyone will have visibility to everything, but it's a connectivity of people coming together to make it work. And that's how an airline functions. And most organizations function on that basis because there's a specific role for a specific requirement.
ESG somewhere in this discussion. And for us marketers, we all have brushed upon ESG in our board meetings and all that. And you guys mentioned that finance and marketing is a match made in heaven. So my question here is, do you think ESG is a good investment moving forward?
We have to worry about a lot of things. Let's get it very clear. You can't always be on survival mode. Somebody's not going to take the problems that we create now. It can't be someone else's responsibility. Have you noticed when you go on a diet, you have a fantastic diet scheme, 4 days, 5 days in a row, really great. Then you say one day cheat, what could go wrong? You cheat, then you restart this thing. And then you go, no, I'm going to be rigorous, I'm going to hold on to my diet, no matter what, I am going to manage it. And then a friend says, Machan, you only live once. Eat again, drink again, no problem. Then you eat and drink again, then you reverse it. We cannot be on survival mode all the time. And the appreciation is that when you look at your children and the children that comes after, and it's a very, very cliche thing to say, but that's the honest truth. We got to think about a society much larger than ourselves. Look at certain organizations that were dealing in fossil fuels, petroleum, the amount of damage that has been done. But how much can you keep taking and taking but not giving and looking at sustainability in the future? And ESG, by concept, is misunderstood by a lot. Some people use ESG and say, we're building a well outside there, here take a photo, that's ESG. They misconstrue with corporate social responsibility. It's not. The environmental social governance, and at different points, whichever the E or the S or the G comes into effect, because we have to make a decision about the work that we do, the impact that we create, the ownership and accountability we have. Fossil fuel companies are now trying to move away from producing fossil fuels. They have immense amount of reserves in their cash reserves that they can create a new business model. Companies that were dealing in petroleum are looking at opportunities to invest in other areas, again, using ESG standards because they want to be able to diversify and innovate differently. Carbon emissions are becoming more important conversations. But the point at which it gets lost is in which country you're having these conversations with. Now that's why the role of the finance and the marketing need to combine together. And if you look at things around sustainability, certain products, they tell you where it's sourced from. So you're much better in control when you know that there's a process where there's a family who made that product, like what he said, are part of a system in which a company is providing incentives and support. It's sourced so that it doesn't affect the environment and the climate in which their children pick things from or drink water from that well. It's sourced not, it comes from 10,000 kilometers, but from 200 kilometers so that we can acquire it and we put less harm into the market outside. And we are selling it to a group of consumers who see value in it. The thing that we got to stop using is ESG to be a buzzword and a selling concept, but something that you actually embody and feel about it. Finance professionals have been asked to take lead on that because we understand money, how it flows, where it comes, where we pay, who we pay it to, how we become business from. So ESG for me is a long-term thing, but needs to start somewhere. I think combination of these two can work. I'll hand it over to my divorce attorney who can add a few points on it.
So from a very deep point of view, Venkat said, from a marketing point of view, no matter, though it shouldn't be considered as a buzzword, from a consumer point of view, now it has caught up as a buzzword. So there's always consumer pressure also to adapt towards brands that are, going through that whole pipeline of things. So then industries and companies are forced to adapt, like apparel companies, etc. When you're supplying to those countries who are monitoring and evaluating, then that consumer insight of ESG and where it's sourced from and how it's sourced matters. So it again comes to that entire cycle of, to adapt to it so that you generate revenue again. So it's done for the wrong reason at some point, but at the end of the day, it needs to be done, and somewhat pressure is given to those industries to adapt, might be for the wrong reasons, but ultimately for a good cause.
I think we've had a very insightful and informative panel discussion. I sincerely thank the panelists for their time and for sharing so much of value, insight and information. I thank the audience for being here today, first and foremost, and making it an interactive Q&A as well. I'd like to hand over to the Master of Ceremonies.
Thanks, Chatushka. And of course, a fantastic and a fun-filled discussion indeed. Thank you all for that interactive session and for your valuable insights on the importance of finance in marketing. And now I would like to call upon Ms. Zahara Ansari, Country Manager, AICPA and SEMA Sri Lanka, and Mr. Kanchana Kaunagama, Chairman of AIMGSL, to present the tokens of appreciation to the speakers, panelists, and moderator of today's program. And can we please have, first of all, Mr. Venkat Ramanan to accept the token of appreciation. And next, can we please have Mr. Channa Gunavardhana. And the next token of appreciation goes to Ms. Manindri Bandarnagar.
The objective is to let you all leave here around 8:09. Very specific, 8:09. All right, let's start. Can we have that on screen? Now, we've had a conversation that's very, very insightful, fruitful, with a lot of experience that is being shared over the panel discussion, and there are a lot of things that are relatable to many of you who are seated here. So very quickly, ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to pinpoint, maybe you would be in these categories. You could be a C-suite, you could be a senior manager or a middle manager or a specialist or a junior executive in your capacities. Maybe you are an entrepreneur and running a successful business. Now, professional knowledge refreshers are something that you might wondering as to how best in your capacities can get your hands into. So just want to give you a quick understanding as to some of the skills that you could opt into getting as we go about, especially if you're a C-suite. There's a C-suite refresher that available which essentially touch on these elements: strategic management areas, risk management and financial strategy, which you might find interesting to know as you would take those conversations with your finance teams, right? So this is essentially targeting the C-suites who are in their capacities. And not beyond that, we also have an arrangement, if you're a senior manager, there's a senior manager refresher, we would use a different name for that, where we would talk about performance and project management, we would talk about advanced management accounting, advanced financial reporting areas as well, which you might find interesting in the long term. Now, if you're in the middle managers or if you're in the specialist or junior executive categories, these are refreshers that you might be able to identify and understand. That would be good for you to have a knowledge of. Digital finance, management accounting, financial reporting beyond your capacities. Now, beyond that, now that essentially resonates something to do with the CIMA studies as well, if you do look into that in detail. But beyond the CGMA qualification, beyond the designation of the qualification itself, we also have something that touch on these areas. How do you understand financial language and terminology? Uncover how to analyze financial information to assist in decision making. Understand basics of budgeting and forecasting to improve performance of your organization, department, and the team. Communicate more effectively with the key stakeholders, including finance. Now, these are options that are available for you to identify and opt in. Now, of course, I'm not going to go into detail as to who will benefit. All of us who have an understanding or who would need an understanding beyond what you have right now will be benefited on this capacity. So, very simply, what you need to do is you all have your mobile devices. Can I place a request if you can? Do a quick scan on that, and maybe you can register your interest, and maybe we should be able to connect with you and advise you further as to how you could get on about it. We are all talking about sustainability, no printed leaflets, nothing to be given, simple matter of scanning it and registering your interest. So thank you very much. Feel free to be in touch with us. Happy to advise you further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tarindu, and I would like to call upon Ms. Zahara Ansari, Country Manager, AICPS SEMA, Sri Lanka, to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you. Unenviable spot. Don't worry, it's going to be short and sweet. Short as your budgets, sweet as your marketing pitches. Interestingly, in our panel today, we had a lot of people who started off as finance, ended up in marketing, just like me. I'd like to thank our speakers and our panelists. A big thank you for not just sharing interesting elements, educating us, but for making it very entertaining. I am sure all of you in the audience enjoyed it as well. The team behind the scenes, Kanchana and the board of AIMG, Sanjay and Sujit, who initially approached me to get events of this nature organized, and of course from the Compia, of course, and Tarindu and Chatushka from the SEMA team, AICP and SEMA team. Jetwing, thank you for all your support as always. For all our participants, thank you for being here. I walked up to the registration counter and asked how many? 115. Thank you. Thank you for taking your time and for being here and for asking all of those very interesting questions. For those of you who are interested in learning more about ESG, you're in luck. Next week we have an ESG summit. So if you're keen on getting a few invites, I could spare a few, please speak to one of my colleagues and we will arrange that for you. And I wish all the best for your future, hopefully without COVID, as Channa wished, but with lots of opportunities to grow. And speaking of growth, if you do want to reskill, my colleague Tarindu took you through so many options. And you heard it from Manindri, as well as the other lady. If you have the designation behind you, you will always be respected and taken seriously. So if you're ready for the match made in heaven, feel free to reach out to us anytime. Thank you, and have a pleasant evening.
Thank you, Ms. Ansari. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we conclude today's forum on finance for marketers. And we would once again like to extend our gratitude and thank the sponsors who supported this event. Also, a kind reminder, ladies and gentlemen, we would appreciate if you could kindly endorse the Association of International Marketing Graduates in Sri Lanka on our social media platforms and, of course, add your well wishes. Thank you very much for your presence here tonight. Have a pleasant evening.